Hello, everyone. Hola. I'm Mary Eintema, the President and CEO of WorldBoston, and welcome to today's program, Juntos en el Cinco de Mayo. And welcome to our speakers, Odile, Paul, and our friend in Boston. And I just lost my document, sorry. Sorry. Here we go, thanks. Okay, and also to our friend in Boston, Alberto Fierro, who is the Consul General of Mexico. I also want to mention greetings to our colleagues in the C by C Summit, which is going on this week. That involves the participation of something like 90 World Affairs Councils across the country. An Ideas Summit, putting the world back together. As you may know, WorldBoston belongs to a number of networks, Global Ties US, and also World Council. So greetings to anyone who's Zooming in as part of the summit. As you may know, WorldBoston is an independent, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization with the mission of fostering international engagement and global cooperation. That mission is particularly important during this truly global time of pandemic, even as we practice social distancing. So we are inviting you to join us these days in a range of virtual activities designed to help keep us all internationally engaged. You can learn more about WorldBoston at worldboston.org, and I hope that you'll join with us and also join as a member. By the way, and we'll mention this at the end, we have another great program coming up on Thursday, The Other Crisis, Oil Markets During COVID-19 with Megan O'Sullivan. So keep your eye out for that. So today's event is part of our new series called International Engagement in a Time of Isolation, which is designed as part of our ongoing citizen diplomacy work and focuses on people-to-people contact and the human face of the international dynamics shaping our lives. Before we go on, a couple of points on housekeeping. Today's session, including questions, will be in English only, although I know there's many Spanish speakers tuning in, and it will be recorded. Everyone but the speakers will be muted. If you want to see everyone all at once, click the gallery view in the upper right-hand corner. Very important, if you have a question, two options for you. We suggest that you raise your hand, clicking on the little hand icon, and when you're called on, we can unmute you and see you. You can also use the chat box, which is a particularly good place to put any technical questions you might have. So, all that said, I will hand over our proceedings to my colleagues, Sarah Sibley, who is WorldBoston's Vice President for Citizen Diplomacy, and Josh Bruno, Manager of Citizen Diplomacy Programs. Thanks a lot.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mary. As Mary mentioned, I have the pleasure of introducing our speakers for this week's session focused on Mexico. First, I'd like to acknowledge our two Mexican Exchange Program alumni who will join the discussion after a few more minutes, Paul O'Hay and Odile Cortez. It was a pleasure to host them in Boston during September and October of 2018 in the exchange program Young Leaders of the Americas Initiative, or YLI for short. These two entrepreneurs have since stayed in contact, and it's a delight to engage with them again in this way. I know we also have a few folks online today from Meridian International Center in DC who manage the overall YLI program. Thank you for joining us today. Now, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who actually met Odile in DC during the YLI program closing with Meridian International Center. Alberto Fierro Garza is the current Consul General of Mexico in Boston and has been a member of Mexico's diplomatic corps since 1993. At the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, he has also served as Director General for Educational and Cultural Cooperation and Deputy Director General for North America. Alberto previously served as the Consul of Mexico in Orlando, Florida, and St. Paul, Minnesota. Early in his career, Alberto served as Deputy Cultural Attaché at the Mexican Embassy in Washington and as Cultural Attaché at the Mexican Embassy in Canada. In March 2019, Alberto moved into his position in Boston, where he assists and protects over 70,000 Mexicans living across New England and facilitates ties of friendship between the US and Mexico. Consul General, thank you for joining us today in our endeavor to promote international exchange. Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you, Mary, for inviting me to be part of this program today and to celebrate the Cinco de Mayo with all your people.
Wonderful. And to get started, what would you like our audience to know about Cinco de Mayo and the holiday significance in Mexican culture, particularly in comparison to how it is celebrated here in the US?
Yeah, it's interesting that in Cinco de Mayo in Mexico is only celebrated in Puebla, where the battle took place in 1862 between the Mexican army and the army of the French Empire. And we won that battle. A year later, we lost against the French, and they invaded the whole country, and they put Maximilian as an emperor, while the government of Juarez resisted until the end of that occupation. But for general Mexicans, Cinco de Mayo is just a day you don't go to work. That's it. Only people from Puebla celebrate it. But in the US, it has become, I mean, I get more congratulations on Cinco de Mayo than on our National Day in September 16. It's a lot more difficult to say happy 16 de septiembre than happy Cinco de Mayo. But it's also that in the late 19th century, Mexicans in LA started celebrating it as a demonstration of strength and of pride for this developing country with a very small army being able to defend itself and defend its sovereignty against the big invader. So it became a Mexican-American celebration. It's almost like the Irish in St. Patrick's Day, now Cinco de Mayo for Mexican-Americans.
Very good. Okay, that's very helpful to know for sure. Turning now a little bit more towards the topic of conversation, and for every day's topic of conversation, COVID-19. And with you here and your expertise on trade, we're hoping that you might provide some brief insight about Mexico's role as the #1 largest trading partner for the US. Could you share how trade is being impacted by COVID-19, and maybe in particular how the pandemic is impacting the implementation of the recently passed US-Mexico-Canada agreement?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Sarah. Yes, we did become last year the first trading partner of the US. It's something that not many people know. We are a little above Canada and way above China now. And in our border, there's 1 million people cross every day and 1 billion trade every day. So this has been disrupted by COVID, definitely. The border is now open only for essential travel or essential crossing. There is produce, there's food, there's a lot of the trade still happens, but because, for example, many manufacturing companies have had to close, right now the supply chain in the automotive industry is having trouble. USMCA will just start. It will begin. The 3 countries finally have approved it, and it was until April 24th that the US Trade Representative announced the other two countries that the US was ready to be part of it. So it will come into force until July 1st. But that doesn't mean that there have not been groups of people of the three countries getting together by Zoom, precisely working on all the implementation. And regarding the supply chain, there has been pressure from the US to Mexico to reconsider which are the essential companies, and they have asked us to reconsider the defense and automotive industries. And I understand our embassy has been very, very active in this with the Ministry of Economy. And so the discussions are taking place, and we hope that very soon, probably in the next week, a lot of that trade will resume.
Okay, that's very insightful. Thank you for that. And last question for now, before we bring in our Mexico-based speakers, in what ways have you seen the Mexican population here in New England band together during the pandemic, or even back home in Mexico to support one another?
Yeah. Well, as you know, Mexicans and Latinos, we are very family-based. So something that has amazed me is how little emergency reports we have gotten at the consulate. We have a 24-hour, 7-day-week hotline, and very few people. Right now, we only know of 4 Mexicans that have died of COVID. And so what happens is that Mexicans and Latinos have family strategies of survival. So it's among the families and friends that each take care of them. But for example, in East Boston, there's a cultural center called Veronica Robles, and I was talking to her this morning, and she's incredible. She has been able to find some resources to help people that have lost their jobs, and even if they don't have the social security, they can have access to some of these survival funds. And there's groups of families helping give some food to those that need it. In Mexico, I hope that our guests will tell us more about it, but I know of 2 interesting experiences. One is the beer company Grupo Modelo has made a very, very important program called Our Mexico, Nuestro Mexico. It's training waiters, so when the pandemic ends, they have training that they can use as part of their CV to be hired. And they are working with a lot of restaurants in order to sell, or people can purchase a dinner for the future and help the restaurants today. And there's another startup that was here last year, and Protesia, that participating with MIT, and they produce medical devices, and they have been producing masks, and they donate them to health professionals. So kind of like it has happened to Mexico 2 years ago with the earthquake, civil society becomes really, really active in these moments.
Yeah, that is very heartwarming to hear, and wonderful to hear about in our community here in Greater Boston as well. So thank you very much, Consul General. We will now bring in Paul and Adil into the discussion to join you, and I will then rejoin for the Q&A with the audience. And for the audience, especially if you might have tuned in a little bit later after we started, we will be having time for questions after about 20 minutes of discussion. So please stay tuned for that. Consul General, here are Odile and Paul.
Okay. Hi, Odile and Paul, welcome. And for all the listeners, everyone that is participating, the Young Leaders of the Americas initiative is a fantastic program that the US State Department has since 2015. More than 750 fellows from the Americas have been participating, and they come to the US with the idea of they're entrepreneurs and innovative civil society leaders that come to strengthen their capacity and advance their projects to contribute to social and economic development of their countries. So while I was in Washington before coming to Boston, I was able for 3 years in a row to meet with the Mexicans that are part of this program. That's where I met Odile. Paul didn't want to meet me that day, and he decided to go do some tourism in Washington. And so Odile is a co-founder and COO of Integrarse, a consultancy on corporate responsibility. She believes in the power of networking and connecting people, organizations, and stakeholders to generate win-win relations. She's now professor at the Tec de Monterrey, and she has a bachelor's in political science and international affairs and a master's degree in corporate social responsibility. Mentors for Climate Reality Project and Global Compact for Young Innovators, and has written for CNN Mexico, Forbes, and Newsweek. Paul Oji Flores is the co-founder of the Tu Elección, a non-for-profit organization that contributes to the development of Mexican democracy by incentivizing civic participation. Currently, he's an elected neighborhood representative and studies for a master's degree in political science at renowned Colegio de México. He has a bachelor's degree in social sciences from Tec de Monterrey too, and his present research subjects are civic participation, collective action, and social behavior under conditions of risk. So welcome both Odile and Paul. And let us, the first question would be to ask both of you, what did it mean to you and for your career to be part of the Young Leaders of the Americas initiative? And what did you do in Boston in particular?
I'll start stealing Paul's place. Really has been a very interesting experience. Whenever we got, it's called drafted, it's a complex process. You apply for, we were around 500 people, Mexicans all around the country that applied, and they selected 16 lucky of us, you know. And when I got the call telling me that I was coming here, everybody kept on saying like, this will change your life, but I had no idea how, you know. And more than business-wise, it has, and I will go into it, but personally, I think that it has made me understand in a very different way. I studied political sciences and international affairs. So I know about like globalization and diversity and cultures, you know, but actually living it, it's way different. And we were lucky to be in Boston, where you have like this thriving community of people that are from very different origins, that they don't only consider themselves Americans, you know, they always have like an adjective for that. Either they're like African American or Latin that has roots in American, like all of this mix of races and cultures was very interesting personally. And as a business, well, first it was a very cool recognition of what I've been doing for the last years. Being an entrepreneur is not easy. It's not easy in anywhere in the world. In Mexico, it has a big challenge. Particularly what I do is not like selling an actual product. We do services, consultancy, and in subjects that are not necessarily sexy, you know, they are not what companies look for since the beginning. So that was a bit challenging at first. And when I came to Boston, I had already had the business for 5 years, and we started working, most of us worked for a month in a sort of internship in some company that did something related to what we do. And I was lucky enough to work in SustainServe, which is a consultancy on sustainability that's actually well known. It has a branch in Europe, and like measuring what I have developed by myself towards what they have been doing for many years, more than me, and in the first world countries, that was a big, interesting check for me, you know, because we were doing it right. We are doing it right.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that was, for me, that was very proud. Like, oh, so I was not crazy. And then they also showed me that normally in Mexico, I always say that I'm like rowing against the flow, you know, because sustainability and those issues are still not very common in Mexico. And when I arrived to Boston, the second, I think it was the second week or something, this company brought the sustainability VP of both two important companies, Iron Mountain and Dell. I was like, my head blew off. You know, like, wait, there's a VP for sustainability out there. They're like, it actually exists. You know, in Mexico, regularly it's a VP from human resources, or the one that takes these things into matter. So that has also gave me like this guidance of, okay, now this is what I want to do for the rest. You know? I want to change companies, not only in making them consider social responsibility, but I want them to replan the whole company towards having one day a VP on sustainability or a VP on corporate responsibility. It actually changed the purpose of my company, because we had this purpose that was something that you write for the website, you know, and now we declare that our purpose is to make every traditional company a social company or a social enterprise, because we now know that it's possible. You know? So that's in a brief, short, what I learned.
Great. And what about you, Paul?
Hi everyone. Do you hear me well? Just to test. Okay, perfect. Well, Wildlife was a very interesting experience. I want to start this with referring to Octavio Paz, which is a Mexican writer. He's very famous because he was a diplomat in the United States for several years, and he was an academic. His writings are very interesting because he was able to understand Mexico by living in another country. This means that when we can understand who we are when we compare us with a different thing. And that was what Octavio Paz did. And that's why he's famous. He has this essay called, I have it here, El Pachuco and Otros Extremos, y Otros Extremos. In there, he talks about the way Mexicans are in the United States and why they are the way they are. And what's the contrast between local culture and how that local Mexican culture transforms itself when it gets to the United States. And it has several interesting philosophical insights of how we Mexicans are through that contrast. That's what I found with Wildlife. The opportunity to live for 1 month in Boston was the opportunity to see another culture and to learn more about my culture at the same time. In this sense, I want to focus in one thing that I really enjoy knowing about, that it's networking. In Boston and the United States, and at least in some places, networking is a big thing. It's in everyone's head, and it's an essential part of the entrepreneur environment. And it's interesting because in Mexico, we don't have it that big. And seeing it and living it was interesting because of 2 reasons. First, I learned in Boston that you need, in order to create, you need to connect. And that's a thing that Bostonians have very clear. You need to connect with people, you need to connect ideas in order to create big things, because I mean, you cannot do things alone. And that's what we are facing right now in my neighborhood, in our neighborhood, because Aldila and I live very closely, because we have an issue in a park nearby, and we are gathering together neighborhoods in order to defend the park. So the first lesson that I learned from Boston is that, again, to create, you need to connect. And in this same idea of networking, one of the criticisms that I have found to that aspect of life is that something that Kant said. Kant, in his philosophy, he argued that humans, we should always be ends in ourselves and never be means. That's something that actually networking doesn't go with. For networking, we humans are means to create some other end. But regarding this philosophical, ethical thing, I did get to feel in Boston that connecting to other people to create something is what has made us create such big, amazing, and interesting societies. So against the odds, philosophical odds, I found in Boston a way of life, a way of connecting, a way of creating that it has been pretty useful for my daily life. That will be it for this intervention.
So it's good to know that the work of WorldBoston really helped you understand better what you're doing and appreciate all the skills you already had, but put them, as you said, measuring yourself and seeing yourself through the lens of others, through the Boston experience. That's great. Now, back home, what are you observing in terms of the Mexican people's resilience during this quarantine time? How do you compare it with you both from Mexico City? You lived the earthquake of 2 years ago. Are people responding? Do you see civil society really into helping and working and taking care of during the pandemic?
Well, I've been thinking a lot about this lately because I believe that there's a big difference between the earthquake and this. You know, the earthquake was like this event that whether you were affected or not, but you had to take a stand from the beginning. You were affected or not, that was a reality. Right? At this point, I was just commenting that I think most of us are still fearful. We have no idea what's happening. And instead of having to go out of our houses to see how we can help, most of us have to come in and actually avoid trying to go out. So that calls for a very individualistic way of helping. In terms of resilience, I personally, I'm still far away from people actually infected. I have no one in my inner circle. Thank God, but like this has made me think, particularly the difference between the earthquake, because once the earthquake happened, I was one of those people that would be outside in the street trying to help and carry things like the whole day for like a week, like straight. And now I've been for a month in my house trying to not go out, to keep by myself. So what I started doing, and I bring this up because at the end it has shown how the community is trying to work now. I created with a friend something that we called like the Vaquita Solidaria. I have no idea how to translate that. Like a pitching of money so we can distribute. And it started as friends thinking, okay, 58% of the economy in Mexico depends on informal economy. So that means that people are not receiving money, they have no wages, they're depending on what they can sell every day, and keeping people out of the streets means they cannot sell. So how can we help them? And we were thinking like, wait, maybe we can find 5 people that we can give 500 pesos, that will be somewhere around $30, $25, depending, a week, and see what they can do with it. It's like a small help, but it will help. Because a lot of people, there's another issue here in trust. Mexicans do not trust each other necessarily. So when these events happen, that's when we start becoming trusting. But before or after that, we don't trust on giving someone money. We rather give them something inspicious or something like that. And what I was thinking was, we cannot pay our rent with food, no matter who gives you the food. So they need actual money, they need actual cash. So what started as, let's pitching with $5 a person and see how much money we can create. Today has become, every week we are giving away around $1,000 more or less. So it has become like a very big project. And I bring this up because what I've seen is that this is the middle classes that have the wage, the stability, trying to see how can I help that one that doesn't have it. And the only way they can do it is actually by giving money. So what I think resilience looks like today is the creation of a community that would give the least effort, because we cannot do more, not because they don't want to, but like just giving money and trying to create a network that will make sure that it will help the the vulnerable groups. I could go for hours for this, so that's what I'm going to go with.
What about you, Paul? What have you seen? Are there no vendors now in the streets, or?
Yeah, that's actually I think that's the right question. Regarding the civil actions, the actions that civil society are taking regarding the coronavirus, I think you, Alberto, said the biggest and more interesting examples. But I will actually try to focus on that question that why are people in Mexico still going out to the streets? Because actually, as you said, as you asked, there are a lot of people still selling in the streets in Mexico. It depends on the place that you are in Mexico City, because there are some, as Osil said, there are some high economy places where people don't need to go out to the street to work. But there are other places where people need to go out because if they don't sell that day, they don't eat. So it is a thing in Mexico, the resilience against the coronavirus. We just did a research to try to find out if the framing with how the government is communicating the risk of going out to streets has an effect on the percentage of the people that go out and stay in home. We found that if the government focused the risk and the losing area on the life, people will stay at home. In the other side, if people perceive that they are losing something in the economy side, they will go out. This experiment, we did it only in high class society in Mexico, but we are certain, almost certain that if we had did it in low class societies, we will see the framing effect have almost no effect because people have to go out. So having the capacity to face these problems needs a lot of government action to help people reduce costs in the economic side, at least to maintain a minimum income for they to be able to live and pay their lives. Because if that doesn't exist, people will go out. I don't know if I answered the question that you had and if I was clear about it, but it's pretty much like that. I mean, it's very difficult for a country with our conditions to stay at home, at least in certain areas. It's impossible, actually.
The government has announced a lot of support to the more vulnerable people, but then there's the owners of small and medium enterprises that they're not getting credits necessarily, and those are having trouble too. But we only have 4 more minutes, so just 2 minutes each of what are you most looking forward to when you can return to normal life?
I besides the obvious, like see my friends and see my family and my nephew and whatever, I'm really looking forward to see what sticks. Like from this experience, what will actually stick. I really hope, we were discussing this earlier, that these Zoom meetings, for instance, seeing friends that live abroad that you never see, and somehow because of the pandemic now you see them every weekend. Like I really want to see what's going to stick from these practices. If home office is going to stick, and then what's going to happen? How are we going to frame home office in the companies? If this solidarity that we have now towards small businesses and towards our employers, for instance, I have a lot of friends that understand that if my boss is not selling, then he cannot pay me. I want to know if this empathy is going to stick. So what I'm really looking forward is to see if these theories that I've been developing during this month of, okay, I think this will stick, but this will change. And I really want to see what we're going to embrace and what changes they will bring.
Thank you, Odile. What about you, Paul?
Yeah, I think we can figure out 2 aspects, one personal and one like more general. In the personal aspect, I want to walk. I want to go walk out and far away from my house. Obviously see my friends. Unfortunately with video calls, and we have been able to keep in touch, but I really want to walk. And in the more general aspect, as Odile said, I'm not sure what's going to come out of this. I have no idea. But what I know is that I really hope that when this ends, we go out fast to reactivate the economy. I mean, because people are dying now because of coronavirus, but there's also a thing that poverty kills. And in places like Mexico, we really need to get out to activate the economy, to stop people getting into poverty and for them facing other problems that are not specifically coronavirus, but created because of the economic coronavirus crisis. So yeah, I mean, that's a pretty black aspect of this thing, but I really hope that we go out and spend money and reactivate the economy fast with small numbers. I mean, small transactions that activate the economy in the lower part of the economy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you both. And yes, there's a saying that in Mexico, when the US economy gets a cold, in Mexico we get pneumonia. And unfortunately, the US economy is going to get pneumonia, and the Mexican economy is going to be very, very hit. But hopefully, soon, and with the new trade agreement beginning in July, we can see the economy come up as soon as possible, because that will make our both countries being in a better moment and in a better space. So
Yeah,
Sarah,
we're going to get COVID.
Yeah.
Mexican economy is going to get COVID.
So I don't know if Sarah or Mary are going to be the ones taking care of the questions.
Yes, yes. Thank you to all of you for your enlightening discussion on the many aspects of effects of COVID-19 in Mexico and the Mexican-American community. We will definitely now be taking some questions for the Consul General and our exchange alumni, Paul and Odile. For those who may have joined this session a little bit later, a reminder that the mics and videos are muted, so we will be taking questions in two ways. You can raise your hand with the hand icon in the participant box, and I will try to call on you and unmute your mic to ask your question directly. Or you can type your question into the chat box, and I will try to read it aloud during the Q&A for you. Let's see, we have one question here. And this is from Stephen Roop. Several experts suggest there will not be a Mexico peak until early mid-May. It sounds like relatively few people are sheltering right now. Do you think this will continue?
Well, again, Mexico is a big country, and so making generalizations is complicated. The three cities that are more problematic are Tijuana and Baja, Mexico City, and Cancun in Quintana Roo. There are other cities that are doing pretty well, Guadalajara and Monterrey, for example, which their mayors did really take very seriously the distancing. Mexico is like 2 weeks or 3 weeks later than the US. So yes, the peak should be in the next 2 weeks. The problem with Mexico is that the number of tests are very low compared to where the country with less tests of the OCDE. So that makes it complicated, but the actual number of cases is still low. Of confirmed cases is still low there for the whole country.
Great, thank you, Consul General. Another question in a similar vein, when do you think we can recover the positive numbers in the economy? Currently seems to be negative in all of 2020. Will 2021 be positive?
I would hope that even before 2021, the second quarter definitely will be horrendous. But maybe the third and fourth will not be big enough to erase the recession numbers, but might be a lot better. It was interesting for me to learn today, for example, that the amount of remittances from Mexicans to the US in March grew in a very, very impressive number. So March still was not that hit by the Mexican community in the US. But I would assume that April will be terrifying in those terms. Because of all the amount of people, many Mexicans that work in some services like restaurants are still working, but many others in construction, in hotels, and those that are undocumented are not able to claim unemployment. So they're having a tough time, that's for sure.
We do have a specific question in terms of the travel industry. And the question is, how serious do you estimate the negative effect will be on the Mexican travel industries?
Devastating. I mean, if you go right now to, my brother, for example, lives in Playa del Carmen in the Ribera Maya, and all the hotels and restaurants are closed. So the Semana Santa, Holy Week, is that and Christmas are the two biggest weeks where hotels are used for in 100%. And there was nothing. It was even a big chunk of the American tourism that usually goes for the April vacation were not there. So hotels, like airlines, that's a sector that is hitting a lot, and tourism is very important for the Mexican economy. So yes, we will be hurt there very, very much.
Absolutely. We have a question from someone whose organization is based in Peru. And she asked if you could comment a bit more about how the government is assisting those in need and or in the labor force. In particular, she says how the rules for how to support the livelihood of different community members seems to change or get updated from week to week, and wonders if that is the case in Mexico as well.
I think the thing with Mexico is that we have this national federal government saying one thing and the local government saying things that are completely different, you know, actually contrary. So in the case, someone was asking over there, like, how is everyday life? You know, like, are you wearing masks or something? Depends on where you live. Because in Mexico City, it was until this last week, I think, that we needed, or it was obliged for us to go out with a mask. While cities like the Consul was saying, Guadalajara, they had it before then. So this idea of how the city deals with it, that's what's putting us back in some senses. Even Mexico City in itself is just too big. It has 16 counties, let's call it. And outside of Mexico City, but still even they're close, is the worst part of it. Iztapalapa is the name. That's where they have, from old Mexico, that's where they have the more amount of people that are sick. So it also depends on what sort of strategy that your local government has. So that is a problem. And then considering this question, if it's changing every week, it's changing every day. It's incredible. We have 2 meetings a day, or 7 in the morning, 7 at night, where federal government comes out and says something, and then you find out later on that the local government said something different. The mask is the clearest example. The federal government has been saying that the masks are useless, that they unless they are like the N95, they have no sense. And then local government says, wear whatever you want, but wear something. So these differences are hitting us hard, because that's why people do not actually trust that there's a virus. I just heard someone yesterday saying, like, I don't really think that there's a virus. Really? Like, millions of people are dying and you think that there's no virus, because we have no one to actually trust about this. And there has been, therefore, no help towards community. The credits that the consul was saying, they were for 25,000 pesos. That's $1,000. What the hell do you pay with that? Like, if you are a business owner, you don't even pay your payroll with that, So, and that's a credit. It's not even money given for free. You're gonna have to pay it back. So we are not seeing a lot of government organized help towards the community, I think.
Great, thank you, Odile. We have another question in regards to an article that was in The Guardian today about criminal gangs being the rivals of governments in providing ordinary people aid around their various COVID-19 concerns or troubles. Is the rivalry widespread? How much might these various governments suffer in terms of public support if they wind up being perceived as ineffective?
Um, well, go on, Alberto. I'll hear you.
Very briefly, and then you comment. I haven't read The Guardian today. I've been Zooming since 9 a.m. But I have read and seen photographs in the news the last days about criminal organizations giving out food. I think, and I'm sure Paul can say more about it, it does tell you how criminal organizations, unfortunately, have so much power in certain regions of the country, and they have a social base, and so they are. It's interesting that they start competing with local authorities in terms of giving away food. It's very worrying because they are criminal organizations, and you would not want a civil society and communities to have to support them. But at the same time, every person that is part of it, and that's the most worrying part that I see in Mexico, is every person that is in the criminal organization. There are so many levels, but they do have families, they have grandmothers and aunts, and so I think it's one of the biggest challenges in Mexico in terms of ending the violence. That, as you know, numbers are terribly big, and it's how local communities are intertwined with a part of the things that criminal organizations are doing. But you are more free to say things, Paul. Give us your...
Yeah, I probably don't know more than you, but yeah, I'm a bit less tight in some aspects. Well, we have in Mexico, we have a problem of governability in the very local level. This starts with a weakness of the municipality governments that has a long way ago. It starts from the revolution when the central government tried to pull everything into its hands in order to control a vast territory with a lot of groups. I mean, it was really difficult to control Mexico's territory in the starting of the 20th century. So it concentrated all in the federation, the federal government, and the local governments were very weakened. In the meanwhile, gangs and criminal organizations started to earn money, started to gain power, started to be more able to provide public services to the population than the municipality government was able to. And we have to consider also that in these places, the state and also the federal government sometimes don't go and don't give so many things to the people in terms of services, goods, or even things. So these gangs has gained a lot of legitimacy between the people, and they are using this time to gain even more legitimacy. And this is very important for them to operate. I mean, being as accepted by the population where they work is a key aspect of their operations, because this way they are protected not only by themselves, but also by the people. So as Alberto said, it is a big challenge in Mexico that we are facing right now in this aspect.
Great, thank you to both of you. We have another question asking specifically about the approval rating for the president. Could you give any insight into that, please?
It's a shame, but it's good.
Yeah, it went from 60 to 68% last week. That many thought, especially middle and higher classes, would have thought that it would be going down, but no. The way he communicates with his base is impressive, and it really went from 60 to 68 for the surprise of many. But Sorry, you were gonna say.
Yeah, the thing is that what we have to remember is that the reason why he won the election, between many things, but one of the main reasons is because he literally looks, speaks, and represents the people that most of the political classes were not representing. So this guy that wakes up every day early in the morning and goes out and says like, no, we are protected by our saints. And if you wear like a rosary or something, or like this communication he handles is a good communication for the grassroots of the Mexicans that were really forgotten for many years. So it makes sense that they are, that he's approved. And then the other way, also, even if we have this fight between federal and local government, as I was telling you, we haven't seen him, personally, I've seen him like ignorant, but not disregarding the issue, you know? So he's there. He's just not there, like Trump, you know, like he would be saying like, yeah, you drink Lysol, but at least he's there, he cares. So I guess that may represent why some of the people are actually saying that, yeah, he's handling correctly, you know? But Paul actually likes this guy, so he should tell us something.
Well, I voted for him, but I don't like him. Well, that's Mario. He helped us here in the place. Hi, Mario. I kind of a bit disagree with you, Adil, in a bit, because I believe that most of the reasons that to explain why he came to government is because of the way we were angry with the past government. And I mean, in terms of percentages, I believe that around 20% of the people that voted for him actually liked him. And the other 30% around voted for him because we didn't want the same thing than regarding the past governments. I mean, that's a rough estimation. It's not very scientific. So my hypothesis is that his ratings are still high because of a thing of hope, not because of an actual idea that he's doing a right thing. And I don't believe that his speeches are good for anyone. I don't think that he convinces anyone with the way his speeches, because it's impossible to follow him in his ideas. He's too slow. The words, the ideas are a bit messed around. I don't believe the idea of the scores, although it's very widespread. Maybe I'm wrong, definitely. But I think it's an idea of hope, that people are still hoping that he will bring us what all the past governments haven't. And that's representation, as Odile said, and interest in the widest part of Mexico population that it's in conditions of poverty. And even though we can call it middle class, they are not as the middle class in the United States. They're way different. So I think it's an idea of hope more than anything else. But probably I'm wrong. Just my idea.
Thank you, Paul. I think that's actually a great point to wrap up on, the idea of hope. We have run out of time for questions, as we do want to respect everyone's time and wrap up within the hour, especially if, like the Consul General, you've been on Zoom all the last 4 hours. We will be sending out a recording link of this webinar in a follow-up email soon, so please stay tuned for that. And thank you again to our speakers for joining us on Cinco de Mayo. It was a pleasure to hear your insights today, and we thank you for helping create an international exchange experience for the audience. Thank you as well to
I invite all your audience to buy Mexican food today, honoring Cinco de Mayo.
On our behalf.
It's a great idea. I know we're doing tacos tonight ourselves.
Okay.
Thank you as well to all of you who tuned in, and we appreciate your own call to citizen diplomacy during this challenging time. We plan to run an event approximately every Tuesday. Next week, we will be doing another round of culinary diplomacy. So if you missed last week's session featuring an alum from Spain cooking live in her kitchen in Madrid, then please do join us. And there's still more this week with WorldBoston. We are also participating alongside the 80+ World Affairs Councils across the nation in the World Affairs Council of America's virtual summit called Putting the World Back Together. It is a council by council series that features webinars throughout the day and evening, every day this week. Our session here was included in today's program. And you can view more sessions at cxcamplified.com. On Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, WorldBoston will be facilitating a discussion on the oil markets and global energy during COVID-19 with Dr. Megan O'Sullivan from Harvard Kennedy School's Belfer Center. You can register via our website or the C/C Summit website. Also, stay tuned on our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and sign up for our newsletters to stay informed. If you haven't already, you can do so on our website. Thank you again to all, and your friends at WorldBoston wish you all to remain in good health and in good spirits. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.